Hello and welcome to interviews number 2. Today I am in Cambodia with Celia Boyd, the founder and managing director of She Investment, a social enterprise supporting women in the country. Hi Celia, thank
Hello.
you very much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Please tell us a little bit more about your business.
So She is a social enterprise. We are the first and only business incubator and accelerator in Cambodia that is specifically tailored for Cambodian women.
Okay. And so why did you decide to create She?
So we created She because we saw a very clear problem and a gap that wasn't being filled in the market, which I think is probably the best reason to start any business. So we saw that there was a lot of microfinance, there was a lot of support with women with larger businesses, or businesses that were larger I should say, a lot of impact investment starting to happen, but there was a very clear gap in terms of supporting women who had a micro enterprise to scale up to bridge the gender gap in the SME sector. Because at the moment, more than 80% of small businesses are owned by men. So what we saw was that we needed to scale women's businesses up so that they were larger, more profitable, and there was more of a gender balance in that, small to medium enterprise.
Very interesting. And when did you start She Investment?
So we launched our first program at the beginning of 2015.
Okay.
And we did about 18 months of research and planning and everything before that. Did a crowdfunding campaign for our first program and a lot of preparation before actually coming to Cambodia and then running the first one in 2015.
Nice. So you're an entrepreneur. And there's a question I always love to ask is why, and when did you know that you would be an entrepreneur?
So I never wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Okay.
It happened kind of by accident. I think if there had been someone doing this already, we would have supported them. We would have found some way to maybe fundraise for them or to support them in some way, or just left it alone. But because we saw a very obvious gap in services that there was a great need for and that wasn't being filled, we saw an opportunity. And so we started something, I think probably without really realizing what it meant to start a business and how much that would kind of take over our lives. And after we had started it, after that, I think I started to think of myself as an entrepreneur once I'd started to start other businesses after that, because I think starting a business it's kind of like getting a tattoo. It's kind of addictive. So once you start one and you realize you get that kind of excitement with a new idea, then they start to happen more often. And I think that's when I started to realize, like, okay, I think this is what I'm good at and this is what I want to do, is start businesses, and this is kind of what keeps me going.
Okay. And on a daily basis, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? What is good, what is bad about it?
I think the good part is being your own boss. I think entrepreneurs typically would make really bad employees because they like to make decisions, or they like to be in a decision-making role. They often kind of think that they know best about certain things, so it's really good to have the flexibility and to be your own boss, and I think that's what I love most. But then there's definitely a lot of things that, I don't know if they're necessarily bad things, but I suppose it depends how you manage them. But I think entrepreneurs have the tendency to, like, their business becomes their identity and their life, and so I think that you put so much more time and energy into something if it's yours and you started it than you would if you had kind of a 9-to-5 job and you could leave your job and leave work at work, whereas when you're an entrepreneur you can't really do that. So I think that's probably the hardest part, is you never leave work. It's always there, and it's
always spend time thinking about it.
It's just always, you can't really, it takes a long time and a lot of discipline to create boundaries. And I think a lot of people go through burnout before they realize how to do that or when to do that. So
that's interesting. So were you an employee before?
I was, yes.
Like me.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What I found with me is like what you said about this freedom. When I was an employee, I worked for great people. I worked for great companies. But I reached a point where I was kind of fed up having a boss. And I really needed to be my own boss, because it's not your own thing. You can't make those decisions that you really
Yeah.
want to do. You can't take risk.
Yeah.
Because you have staff, you are accountable to the shareholders,
Yeah.
and you can't really move forward with this great idea that you have. But the only way to see if it's going to work, it's by testing it.
For sure, and I think that's one thing that sets business owners apart, is that they're naturally kind of risk takers. So if they're working for an organization that they think, you know, could be taking certain risks or making certain decisions, then it can be really, really frustrating to be an entrepreneur. And I started off being an employee before moving to working remotely and doing freelance. And I really loved the freedom that provided. And even though I was working for people, I was making I had a lot of autonomy. And I think that's kind of where I started to realize that was the kind of job that I wanted to have, something that had flexibility and freedom and autonomy.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on that. So what do you spend your day doing? What are your responsibilities?
It's a lot better now. I think when we first started, I was like in the business with every business that I've started or I've co-founded. Those first kind of 6 months, 1 year, I'm very much in it. So when I started a cafe, I was like literally in there serving the customers every day, and then running back upstairs to manage my team at She. During those first couple of years at She, I did, you know, we all did everything like a typical startup. When you've only got 3, 4, 5 people, you're the marketing manager, the fundraiser, the strategic person, like the accountant, everything. And that's really hard because nobody is good at everything, and so you find yourself doing things that you're not necessarily that talented at or naturally come to you. And so now things are a lot better because I have an actual team. So I'm very lucky. We have 15 people at She now, and that means that I have someone who does marketing, I have someone who does comms. We have a whole programs team that actually delivers all of our programs, and they're all Khmer women. And so my job now is, particularly from 2018, I've stepped into the role that I really should be doing as the leader of an organization, and that is essentially around building a team and leading a team, business development and strategy. That's what I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Strategy is an interesting topic. I would like to talk a little bit more about it. Tell me, what does it mean to have a good strategy?
I think so. I guess everyone looks at it a different way. I personally think that entrepreneurs are like ideas people, and they're really, really good at thinking of this big, scary goal or this big idea, and then the strategy is essentially the plan as to how to put those steps in place to achieve that. And a lot of people, they need other people around them to actually help them with that, because entrepreneurs are big idea thinkers, and then they need to have a team that can actually say, okay, that's a nice idea, but how are we going to physically make this happen, and how are we going to do it? So a strategy is, those smaller goals that will help you to achieve that much longer term vision.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with your definition. And when you talk about goals, one mistake that people usually make is that they forget to evaluate the goals, because you can have a strategy in place, you have your plan, you know where you're going, but how do you know when you reach your destination?
Yeah.
So do you have KPIs to measure the success of your strategy, and can you talk a little bit about them?
We do, and I think that's probably been a real turning point for us, is when we actually started to implement those KPIs, because previously we were very much a startup. And we were just kind of like, let's pilot this and see if it works, and hopefully we can keep it going and earn a salary one day. But once we got to the point where we're about 2.5, 3 years old as a company, we said, okay, we have to have a real strategy in place, and not, the typical 50-page business plan that you create and no one ever looks at again, which we've all got. We now have a 2-page strategy, two-page business plan, and it's essentially just a list of our 10-year vision, and then it's broken down into our 3-year, 1 year, and 3-month KPIs, and they all have to be measurable and achievable. And we have a quarterly management meeting to see how we're going, and we also list the key issues that we have to tick off on that as well. So we set big goals, like our 3-year goals are kind of quite intimidating and like scare me, but our quarterly goals are much more achievable. They're still big, but we find it that every time we have these quarterly meetings, we're also ticking off those goals a lot, and that kind of really keeps the momentum going and keeps our motivation going as well, because you have to be able to see that you're achieving things. Otherwise, everything you just keep saying, oh, we'll do it in 2 years, we'll do it in 3 years.
So breaking down these long-term goals into smaller goals.
Yeah.
And I guess also those meetings that you have on a regular basis is also a way for you to engage the staff. Right?
Yeah, and I think it's a way as well to force yourself to get out of the business. So we often go physically to a different location, and we'll have, it's just 1 day every 3 months, where our leadership team can sit down together and just talk about strategy, because otherwise you never end up doing it. It becomes this thing that you always plan to do, or you kind of do on holiday when you're not, you shouldn't really be working. But we schedule it in, and again, we've only started doing this in the past kind of 9 months maybe, and it's really, really made a difference. We had our last strategy day yesterday. Okay. And it was surprising because we kind of looked at our quarterly goals and we're ticking them off, and we're like, oh, okay, we actually are achieving these things, even though sometimes it feels like we're kind of butting our heads against a brick wall. It refreshes you and remotivates you and brings you together as a management team too, and makes sure you're all on the same page, because otherwise, if you don't do that every few months, you just end up going in all kinds of different directions and not really being, heading towards the same goal together.
Yeah. So, I guess what you're saying is coming from all these plans in your head that you do on holidays or whenever, but then making sure that you move forward, that you get things done is very important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and some people, they have a business and they want to stay that size, and that's totally fine. But you still have to keep that going, right? You have to keep the sales going.
You just need to move forward. At least step 1, and then step 2, and then step 3.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. What's your big dream?
I think personally for my business, the dream would be that I have a team that doesn't need me to be there all the time, because I am one of those people that I'm good at starting something, and I love building a team, and I really love managing my team, but I would also like to know that it will continue on without me, because what I'm afraid of is if I get sick or if I'm not here one day, will it keep going on without me? And so my dream personally for the business is that I don't have to be there in the future if someone else wants to take over it and continue it forward. Particularly as we're in Cambodia, and my co-founders are Cambodian, and it's really about Cambodian women. And then from the impact side of things, we have like a really big long-term kind of vision where we want to see 1 million people who are earning an income from women's businesses. So we want to say by 2030, we can see the very tangible impact of the women that we've supported have scaled up, and they've created jobs and increased incomes for families, and that's impacted more than 1 million people. So that's our long-term, our very big, that's definitely not in the quarterly goals. That's like the 10-year vision, but yeah.
The big, hairy, audacious goal.
Exactly, yes.
That's very good. That's a very good goal to have. Right? And I want to come back to something we talked about at the beginning. You were saying that as an entrepreneur, you always think about work all the time, but you need to establish some boundaries at one point. So how do you manage, to find that balance between private and business life?
I'm really bad at it.
Okay. Do you need a coach, maybe?
Potentially. Oh man, I'm getting better at it as a result of having been so bad at it, I think. And I'm also probably not a very good example because my partner is also an entrepreneur. So that means we're just as bad as each other. And when we go home, there's not, you know, that other person who can kind of support you through the stressful times, because you're both going through the stress together. And there's really kind of no break from it unless you physically go away and have a very, very forced break. So I think I've realized that the best way for me to manage it is to schedule in the breaks. And I'm really lucky. I try to, like, I have mentors and people who kind of keep me accountable to that. And I've learned a lot from having burnt out multiple times and having learned about what I do wrong, and also working with entrepreneurs, you know, seeing how much that kind of thing affects you. And the energy can only keep going for so long before it runs out. And so if you need to keep that going, I've just realized that even if I'm really energetic and motivated, things are going great, I still have to force myself to have time off and have a break. Because otherwise I just don't know I'm burning out until it happens. And then really, like, just classic stereotypical things like exercise. Like, if I didn't exercise every day, then I would probably go insane. So having those, you know, like really structured routines that like force you to get your head out of it is really important. And we're really lucky, like when you're an entrepreneur, you do it because you love it. And I do something that I love talking about and working in every single day. And therefore I have to be very disciplined with forcing myself to take a break from it.
Yes. I totally relate to that. It's the same. You talk about routine. Do you have a morning routine?
Yeah, I exercise first thing in the morning because by the end of the day, I am so tired and I'm still kind of thinking about, you know, all these things, and I might have to go to a networking event, and I find it really difficult to get up in the morning. And you know how people exercise early in the morning and they always say I'm not a morning person. I just forced myself to be, and so because I feel like if first thing I do is I go and I exercise, I feel like I've achieved something. And I feel like I have started the day not thinking about work and not on my emails. I've had like an hour at the gym where I'm not thinking about anything else other than like how difficult it is doing like 50 burpees or whatever. And then I'm like, okay, I've achieved something, I've started my day well, and I've like have a bit of energy, and I feel good about myself because I did something for myself. It's a good way to start my day, and then I can get into it. Whereas if I wait until the end of the day, I just don't want to go. I just want to go and have like a beer or something and calm down.
I understand. It's the same for me. I love getting up in the morning. I used to get up so late, and then I change and I discover the power of getting up in the morning, taking my time, having my coffee, having my big breakfast, then going to exercise, usually in the morning. It just preps me for the day. And I feel ready. I have not talked about work. I have not. Maybe I've
time
thought
for
about
yourself.
work a little bit.
I mean, you always are.
Yes.
But it's time for yourself when you kind of like, you're doing something nice for yourself, and something that's just completely separate. And like a lot of people meditate in the mornings, and I just can't. I'm just one of those people who's never really been able to. So I found that doing exercise that's intense enough that like doesn't allow me to think about other things it's a really good way to like clear my mind at the beginning of the day. I think it makes me a lot more productive too.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That and holidays.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So if you had known everything that you know now, okay, what would you have done differently as a business owner?
I would have I don't think I ever expected things to be easy, but I probably would have taken better care of myself or put plans in place to do that. I also wouldn't have kind of kidded myself and said that I'm not going to let this take over my life, or I'm not going to let this affect my relationship or anything like that, because at the end of the day, you know, that's just not really, it's just not possible. I think you have to kind of say like, I'm really willing to invest my entire life into this for the next couple of years, whilst having boundaries in place, but also just having the right expectations. Because I see a lot of people who start a business and they're very excited, and that is really, really great, but they're going to kind of be brought down very quickly as well.
Yes.
And so having the right expectations in place, and being prepared for that, and planning to take time off in advance, and knowing when you're pushing yourself too far, and also like surrounding yourself with people who will keep you accountable and call you out when you're working until midnight every night. You need someone there to say, like, I know that you're feeling good right now, but this is not sustainable, and you need to kind of take a break. And I would probably get some more regular mentors. I went through periods where I would...
Good for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think having a mentor, actually more specifically having a coach, things really changed for me when I got a coach. I have people who mentor me around business, but then I also have a coach who kind of keeps me accountable more personally as well. And I think people get to the point where they think that I've started this many businesses and I'm this successful and whatever, but they don't realize that you need that person to keep you accountable and to check in with you, and to really keep you aligned with like why you're doing this in the first place, and what are your goals personally and for your business, because otherwise you just get so lost in it all. So I think, that was my long-winded explanation of, I think I would probably have gotten a coach earlier, but I would have surrounded myself with more mentors, not just ones who like could tell me about a business model, but people who really could have a longer term relationship with and would keep me accountable.
Mentors played an important part also in my
I think for anyone who's really gotten to a certain point in their business, I feel like most of them will tell you like a mentor is such an important part of it, regardless of what business you have or what kind of business or how big the business is. It's such an important, you just need to know that someone's kind of got your back and is there to give you that advice.
So then it brings me to my final question. Would that be the main advice you would give to those wannabe entrepreneurs or those current entrepreneurs, those people who are listening to us today?
Yeah, definitely. Because people always, they start something and they think that their idea is the best idea in the world.
But it is.
And it is. Like, I think you should definitely like go ahead and do it. However, there are so many people that have been doing it for, I've only been doing this for like 5 years. There are people who've been doing this for a much longer period of time than you, and you need to like be very humble and put your ego aside and ask for help and ask for advice, and just try to build that community. That's probably the best thing that you can do for yourself and also for your business. Just don't pretend to know everything, because like other people have made the mistakes before you, so allow them to tell them allow them to tell you what mistakes they've made so you don't make the same ones.
All right. Well, that's a great advice. Thank you very much for this very interesting conversation, Celia. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this discussion, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.